What is the problem today with young men that you see?
Oh gosh,
Where do we start? Where do we start?
yeah, gosh, 1 hour later. I'll tell you what. Let me tell you an interesting story. I actually, on our podcast, I got in something of a fight with my co-host Christian, who's a great guy. We've been good friends for a long time. He'd worked with me in politics for a while, and we were just talking about, again, this topic. What's going on with young men? What's going on with young men in society and relationships? Why are young men checking out? All of that. And I took kind of the typical older guy attitude, like buck up, get your crap together, go to the gym, read more, go talk to girls. And we got done. And he looks at me and goes, "I'm so tired of that crap from people like you." He goes, "You got married at 19, you got a beautiful wife, you got kids, you got this whole deal, and you're looking at me, I'm almost 30. I find it almost impossible to date in this environment." My initial reaction was, all right, well, I guess we're going to fight this out, right? And I started thinking for a second. I was like, man, he's right. I'm being flippant about this. I'm being very flippant about this because I'm 45, so I'm not ancient. But it's true. The world that I grew up in the 90s, early 2000s, I think is significantly different than the world that young men are growing up in right now. I've conceded all those points. I believe they're relevant. I believe they're worth discussing. I believe men have a right to feel that is completely unfair and unrealistic. Question is, how do you get out of it?
So why is it happening?
So I think there's a couple different reasons for it. I think in many cases, there's legitimate criticisms, right? There are problems with the fact, as we look back through history with respect to women's place within society. I think there are problems when you see like the temperance movement that took place in the early 20th century that was led to the, abolishing alcohol and the, the 18th Amendment, I think. That was rooted in a very real problem. And the very real problem was alcoholism had become rampant. A lot of, not most, but a lot of men were abusive to their women, weren't fulfilling their responsibilities to protect and provide and be the sort of men that their wives deserved, that their children deserved. And so I think there was a push toward that at the same time that we were trying to create greater equality before the law for women. At the same time, there is another political philosophy out there that is largely rooted in Marx, which really despises the nuclear family. And that's not hyperbole. If you read Marx, he believed in the abolition of the family. He thought the family stood up against kind of this sort of ideal socialist society he wanted to create. It was one where children would not only be educated collectively, but they would be raised collectively. He looked at marriage as particularly oppressive toward women in general. And when you see other people that were very prominent thinkers within, especially second, third wave feminism, people like Simone de Beauvoir, she actually said very proudly in a debate, I think in the 70s, said that women should not be given the option to be stay-at-home mothers, because if they had that as an option, too many of them would choose it and it would disrupt the progress that they were attempting to make. So I think there has been a very, very dedicated philosophical and political push to undermine the family. I think when you undermine the best version of traditional masculinity, you do a good job at actually achieving that. Especially when you want to pretend as if men and women are essentially interchangeable. We're not.
So my belief on this matter as a bachelor, a 25-year-old male bachelor, is that society has gotten way too easy for everybody.
Yeah,
we have
true.
everything that we could possibly ever want. And then, so where do we turn? To a more hedonistic approach towards life, where we're just kind of grabbing at the next immediate pleasure rather than long-term goals. And I think that that's kind of also infected women as well, in the same thing where like short-term relationships are super common these days. And women can just go on their phones, scroll on TikTok and be hit with dopamine hit after dopamine hit and happiness after happiness. And then there's no real consequence to that. Like there's no negative consequence to just continually getting dopamine, because you're always kind of floating at a higher vibration.
You could live a pretty good life, honestly, off like $2,000 a month. Because think about it, you could rent a room in a place for like $800, eat junk food, and then scroll TikTok. And now, I mean, it definitely serves advertisers where they want you to stick around on these platforms longer and longer and longer.
Sure.
It makes sense. It's like that drives a lot of profits for people.
Oh,
if a portion of the population just says, you know what, I'm just going to be on my phone all day. I'm going to be totally happy just doing the minimum. And it's a pretty good life compared to like 300 years ago. I mean, this would be a
subsistence
luxury.
farming and dying.
gosh.
If the crop doesn't come in before the winter. Yeah.
My gosh.
No, I think there's a lot of truth in the fact that technological development has decreased the necessity for a lot of, or it's removed certain challenges that used to be so evident and gave us meaning and purpose. Right, going out and fighting for something, and again, bringing in the crop or protecting the family from the barbarian horde or wherever else it was, brought meaning and purpose. Now, I will say this: I don't think it's a 1-for-1 exchange. Right? I don't think you're going to exchange meaning and purpose for just simple dopamine hits. And I think we see the effects of that, because as much as we talk about how, what are the real consequences for somebody, just streaming through or watching TikTok or watching porn or whatever it is. And okay, hey, yeah, my basic necessities for life are met in the sense that I have enough food, I have shelter, and I have very, very easy and accessible entertainment. And yet people are miserable. Right. And yet I can't watch, we don't have cable in my house. So this is the first time I've been watching cable in a while. Every other ad is for some sort of pharmaceutical. Every single, it's amazing to me. It's shocking to me. By the same token, if you actually look at young women and what they're saying, you have the highest diagnosis of mental illness among young women that you've had in recorded history. And it is ideologically aligned as well. It's not 1-for-1 across the board. Women who identify as more conservative or more moderate are about, according to Pew Research, I think it's about 19 to 23% have been diagnosed with some sort of mental illness. As soon as they identify as being liberal or progressive, it jumps up to 52.
Now, could that be because people that are conservative are less likely to test?
It could be. Yeah, it could be. But the other thing that you've got to ask, though, is this constant drive that we've had. I think it was Abigail Shriver's talked a lot about this constant drive to dwell on that which you feel has been challenging or traumatic. I mean, the word trauma has expanded to include somebody said something mean to me. I got misgendered at the coffee shop. That's traumatic. And I do think that goes back to your point about when things become so easy, minor inconveniences are now earth-shattering trauma. But I don't think that's healthy. Right. And I do think that a mindset which says, I expect life to be difficult. I expect there to be challenges. I expect that to actually find meaning and purpose, which is going to give me not just happiness, but a sense of joy and peace in the midst of the storm. Like, that's going to require work. And I don't think people are happy. I mean, yeah, they might be happier than they would if they were starving to death, but I don't think that provides purpose.
Right. I think the data clearly shows people are not happier today by any means. And there are consequences, like you said, but the consequences are so far removed from that initial infraction of going on your phone rather than going outside.
Yes.
And I think that like in Atomic Habits, James Clear's book, by the way, if you haven't read it, highly recommend you read it. He says that consequences, in order to actually promote positive or negative behavior, need to be directly after whatever it is that you do.
Oh, I think
they need to be quick and they need to be strong enough to elicit an actual response.
As someone that serves an elected office, I could not agree more with that statement. Because part of the reason why people get so frustrated with politics is because they don't see the direct consequences of the action. They don't draw a straight line between this policy led to this consequence. And the end result is that if you don't make the right connection, then you make the wrong diagnosis and then you start looking for the wrong cure. And when the cure just allows you to continue off into that spiral, it gets significantly worse over time. But no, I think you're right. If there isn't a one-to-one connection between what is actually causing the problem, people will continue to look for whatever the simplest solution is.